Hi, I'm Bob Vila. Welcome to our storm-ready house here in Punta Gorda, Florida. The outside is coming together nicely. We're going to give you a look at some of the rough electrical and plumbing work that's already been done inside, also front door installation and other trim items. We're going to look at a new type of wallboard that's mold and mildew resistant and putting in a generator today. Stick around. The interior of the house is really almost completed with drywall up, paint finishes on. In fact, the front door is in. I can't open it because it swings in such a way that it opens out. But anyway, Jesse Gonzales, our contractor, was here the other day to tell me all about it. Okay, so Jesse, now we're looking at the front door, and it's oversized, right?
Correct. This is a 3 foot by 8 foot entry door with a 12-inch side light.
With a 12-inch side light. Let's take a look at the side light a minute, because all the windows and all the glass in this house is impact resistant.
Correct.
This is also?
This is also an impact side light.
Okay, that means it's heavy. And an 8-foot door. Is it a metal door, wood door? What is it?
No, this is a fiberglass door.
Okay. So the first thing he's done is to put down a thick bead of butyl caulking.
Correct.
And you guys always pour your slabs so that you have this kind of a lip there.
Yes, we do. And we also use an oversized sill. We use an 1 3/4 sill to keep out the water penetration.
All right, and it's aluminum.
Correct.
Okay. So what's he doing now over here?
Right now, he's mulling the side light and the door together.
The interesting thing about this door, though, aside from all the other features, is the fact that it swings out.
Correct. It is an outswing door.
And this is something that's being done primarily from the point of view of hurricane winds. Because if you have an outswinging door, obviously when it's closed, it's butting against a rabbet, against an edge, against a doorstop, as well as the bottom lip of the threshold.
Correct.
So nothing's going to blow that in.
Absolutely.
So it's a nice front door, and as you can see, most of the finishes are very much complete inside the house, although the air conditioning hasn't been installed yet, and we're building in about 95-degree temperatures out here in Florida summers. This is the entrance to the master suite, 8-foot doors throughout the area. Again, the finishes in here are complete, and this is a room that I think is 12 by 16 with the big slider looking across the pool onto the openings and the canal. Now, the rough electrical work was just going in last week, and so we took a peek at how they couple these plastic boxes with the metal studs. Let's watch. All right, Jose Rodriguez here is doing the rough electrical wiring. What kind of a box is this that we use with metal studs, Jose?
This is a plastic box, 2x4. You have to with the screws over here. Right in the measure.
So it comes with that plastic flange so that you can drive a fastener right into the metal.
Right. So. This is a nail plate.
You have to put a nail plate right over the wire on top of the furring. And a simple tie to get them all tightened up.
Right.
So first your ground, right?
Yes. Over the first is the ground. After is the white wire, and the hot is the last one.
So first the ground, then the neutral, and then the hot. The master suite is very spacious. Not only do we have big walk-in closets on either side here, but the space itself is about 12 by 12, so that there's room for a linen closet, a toilet alcove, 2 vanities, one on either side, a shower area, as well as a big soaker tub. And this will be coming together next week. Let's take a closer look in the living room. Now, this house is about 2,400 square feet, and like many modern Florida houses, much of the space is informal, but they always have an area, usually by the front entrance, where you have the formal dining room, you have the formal living room, and of course what makes it a Florida house is the views. And in this particular case, the view is of the canal, and we've got these fantastic triple sliders. Last week we visited the PGT plant not far from here, where they make about 30,000 of these impact-resistant windows a week. And we saw firsthand how they stand up to objects hurled at them in high winds. Back here we saw how they're installed into the precast openings in our solid wall frame. And we got started installing the frames for some of the pretty large sliders. Once they were set, the guys were able to work the enormous glazed panels into their tracks and adjust them for smooth operation. Even though they're heavy, they're well-balanced, well-designed sliders. And of course, that means that whether they're closed or open, you're going to enjoy this terrific canal view with all the sailboats and stuff, and you're going to have the assurance that if you are in a hurricane with high winds, you've got the impact-resistant glass with a Butasite, DuPont Butasite layer in the middle of it, which means that no matter what shoots into this at a high impact rate, it's not going to shatter the glass. And that's the key thing, not allowing hurricane winds to enter into the house envelope, because that's how everything gets destroyed. Okay, and now the transition between this formal space and the vast informal area of the house is a nice touch. They basically framed this out with the metal stud work so that you've got these steps leading into the open archway. And in here, you've got an open plan kitchen that will have a low wall. The low wall separates the family room from the kitchen area. The layout involves an island, but the main thing is that you've got so much open space. An area over here for informal meals, breakfast nook, or whatever you want to call it. Then a very nice deep family room, which again benefits from all the views of the pool area as well as the water and the canal. And then on this side of the wall, you've got 3 small bedrooms for visiting kids or grandkids. And the bathroom has been positioned right here off the hall. Now, last week we were looking at some of the rough work that was being done here with, again, the metal studs and the PVC piping. Let's watch. Okay, that makes it easy. Now, Dan, working with metal studs, which much of the new housing here in Florida is all metal studs, right?
Yes, sir.
Does the plumbing work go quicker?
Yeah, it's a little bit easier to take and punch it out with that as opposed to bringing in a drill, marking your hole, drilling it out, cleaning it up.
Yeah. So we've also got a slab. A lot of viewers live in houses with basements or crawl spaces. When you've got a slab, that means before the slab got poured, everything had to be run, right?
Yes, sir. We take all the plumbing underground. We start out at the front with the drain set a certain height and run our plumbing in. After that, we bring in the water lines and run them to the points where they need to be, the hot and cold.
Yeah. So that here on the slab, we can see right next to where he's working, the large opening there is actually the waste pipe for the toilet.
Yes, sir. That is a 4-inch PVC drain line, and we glue a flange down to it, and the toilet sits right on top of that and bolts right to it.
All right. Okay, and now what kind of tubing do you use for all the hot and cold feeds?
We use a CPVC. It's much like PVC, only it's rated for hot pipe.
Okay. And you just cut it with that tool there?
Yes, sir. That's a ratchet cutter.
And you can put a little bend into it like that. You don't have to worry about. What do you do about keeping it from vibrating in the metal studs and having a noise problem?
What he's installing right now are called pipe tights. That would be a 1/2-inch pipe tight. This is 1/2-inch pipe.
Yeah.
It's and it's to protect it from the metal cutting into the pipe and anything else getting into the pipe.
Right. So what's he getting ready to build here, Dan?
Okay, what we're doing is we're having to run a lav arm over to the lavatory to tie the drain in on the sink itself.
Okay, so the sink is going in this corner of the bathroom.
Yes, sir.
And that's all there is to it. Although most of the drywall has been installed, we kind of saved one sheet so that we could talk about it. And we're in the 3rd bedroom, which really has the capacity of being used as a home office as well. Let's say hi to Thad Goodman and watch how this last piece goes in place. Thad, this is a 4x10 sheet?
4x10 sheet, that's correct.
That makes it quick, doesn't it? Now, this is Georgia Pacific's dense armor. And actually, before you nailed it in, let me see if we can take a look, because it really looks like any conventional gypsum wallboard, right?
Yes, it does. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, and does it install traditionally?
Installs traditionally like regular drywall. It's got a taper on it just like it would, even though it's all fiberglass-faced, any other drywall. And we would screw it in the same kind of a manner.
Right,
put
so
it up in the same area.
he's getting ready to do that right over here. And he's got his little lift down there so that he can get the whole sheet up tight. And of course, we are in a solid concrete house, so we have furring strips every 16 inches on center. And that's what they get attached to, right? Now, one of the big challenges in any kind of humid environment, but especially in Florida, is problems you might have with mold and mildew. And I guess that's the main thing that we're addressing with this particular product, right?
Right. When you think about the way traditional drywall has been made, since the 60s, it's been made with paper, rock, paper. We have starches and sugars that we put to attract the paper into the gypsum so that those bond together.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Obviously, that's what happens when it gets wet.
Starches and sugar, my
Starches
gosh.
and sugars, and then we start to have things fall apart when it gets wet.
Yeah.
It also is a good food source for mold. So the theory with Den's Armor Plus is that we've taken that food source away by wrapping it in fiberglass mats. We also clean our system for a couple days before we run this product so that we can take all the recycled content out of our board also.
Okay.
So all the things that could grow in that cavity theoretically are gone.
Okay. No, I didn't realize that about the sugars and the starches. I thought it was just a question of the paper being an organic material that would be a host for the mildews and the molds.
Yeah, no, when you think about the way a gypsum crystal rehydrates or regrows, typically it goes every which direction, and what we're trying to do is get it to adhere to that paper.
Right.
So as we get it to adhere to that paper, we use the starches and sugars to bind it.
Okay.
So those are our binders.
Okay. Thad, what's the rule in terms of spacing?
Typically when you've got a concrete wall like this, what you're looking for is you're looking for 2 sets less than 8 inches apart.
Okay. So that's why you're attaching them in pairs like that.
Exactly.
And then at the bottom you usually have furring strip across horizontally.
Right, exactly.
Okay, now let's talk about the tape, because if you've gone to all this trouble to not have any food source for mildew, if you have paper tape, that would be the same thing, right?
Right, exactly. We want to eliminate as much of the food source as possible. So what we're looking for is we're looking to use a fiberglass mesh tape.
All right. And then once you've put the tape up all over the place, is it a traditional joint compound?
Well, there's 2 ways to do it. Traditionally, you could use joint compound, but the better way to do it would be to use a setting compound. It's got accelerators and retarders in it so that it dries faster and you have less opportunity for moisture intrusion later.
Terrific. And in this climate, that's what you need, because
Yes.
it's so hot and humid. Great. Thanks, Thad. We have a generator on the job, and right now, Harry Cunningham is here, our electrician, to explain the hookup to us, and Kim Hansen is here from Square D. Harry, let me ask you first, how is an electrical connection, this is a service basically, how is it different when you have a generator?
Well, you have 2 inputs of power. One, obviously, the utility power.
Yeah.
The second one in here is the feed from the generator itself.
Okay. And we don't have too many switches to worry about. What happens here?
Well, basically, we have a safety mechanism here that does not allow us to bring the generator power into the utility circuit simply by the fact that we must turn off the utility first before we can lift this mechanism. And at that time, we can bring the generator power on. Now it's fed to the load center in the house, as it normally would be, even under utility power.
All right, because, I mean, even if the power is down from the utility on the street after a terrible hurricane, your generator doesn't want to try to be feeding power out to the
exactly.
to the whole neighborhood.
This mechanism serves two purposes. One, obviously, is safety of life and personnel, so that we are not feeding electricity back into another circuit where someone might be working on it.
Yeah.
Then the second advantage of it is that we can control the amount of power. If we allowed the utility or the generator to feed into the utility, you couldn't carry all of these other houses with it. So consequently, you have a limited amount of power from the generator, and this way we conduct it straight into the load center here at this house and nowhere else.
Okay. Now, Kim, what are some of the features that we're talking about in terms of the switching mechanisms that are required for a generator?
Well, you definitely want to have the flexibility to run multiple circuits and run different circuits at different times.
Why don't you just want to put the power on in the whole house so the kids can go watch TV?
Actually, this generator doesn't run the whole house. It's not large enough to do that. So this device gives you the flexibility to turn some circuits on and others off, and then switch that around as you need to. So you can run your air conditioning. It is large enough to run the air conditioning. And perhaps as the house cools down in the evening, you decide that you don't want to run the air conditioning for a couple hours, but you want to do a load of laundry. You can go ahead and flip that switch and turn your washer on.
Sure. In a storm emergency, sometimes people might be without power for 3 or 4 days or even longer. And if you've got those capabilities and you got a generator, then you at least can keep your food from spoiling.
Correct.
You can keep the temperatures under control, because one of the biggest problems is when you've got the high humidity and the high temperatures and you've had some water infiltration, you can have a lot of mold and mildew damage.
That's correct.
Great. All right, well, it sounds like we're all set. We've got a generator going in, and Ron Ford is here from Kohler Generators to tell us all about it. And it sure is nice and small.
It is, Bob. That's one of the nice features of this, is that as compared to some of the older models, we've been able to figure out how to get them in a smaller package and make them quieter, too.
But I also know that it weighs about 400 pounds, which is why just about a half an hour ago we took advantage of the big machine that's here, and we kind of hooked it up on the pallet and moved it over here. Yeah.
Now, it can be a wrestling match that way.
Yeah. Now, I know that these have become very popular since the hurricane season last year here in Florida. How many of them are you selling?
Our business is up about 600% from last year just in the Florida area itself.
Hard to believe. Now, tell me about this particular generator. I assume I can just open it up and look at what's in there.
This is a 12 kW model, or 12,000 watt.
12
model.
kilowatts. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Has a reciprocating gas engine here that runs on either LP or natural gas.
So you have the option of running it off of your gas tank.
That's correct.
Or off of regular gasoline.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Digital controller, which is brand new, we just come out with in the last year and a half or so, is absolutely fantastic controller. If you've got sensitive electronic equipment in the house, such as a plasma, screen TV, or your computer system and that, this really puts out clean power that those equipment likes.
Okay. And then what about the actual load that it can handle? I mean, this is a 2,400 square foot house. I think the air conditioning unit's probably 4 ton.
This unit is actually very powerful for its size. It's a 12 kW, but it will run a 4-ton air conditioner. Again, because of some of the advances in technology, this will start and run that 4-ton air conditioner and a bunch of your other appliances and your lighting. You can sit here and pretty much live life normal.
And what's the cost?
About $7,500 installed.
$7,500 installed. That's not bad at all. All right. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Bob.
We're running short on time. Next week, we're going to be putting in some of the creature comforts, like a wonderful spa in the master bathroom, and start building the swimming pool. Till then, I'm Bob Vila.